Okay, hello everyone. So I'm
Oh,
back here again today with Claire. She runs a really interesting YouTube channel, and today we're going to talk about Jesse Lee Peterson, who's kind of a interesting individual. And we're kind of gonna go over like some of the things he talks about and why he has a lot of problems. So, Claire, do you want to talk a little bit about who Jesse Lee Peterson is and like why you were interested in discussing him?
yes. Jesse Lee Peterson is someone who's described by the media as a black conservative. He dislikes black people a lot, and he really loves white people. But I feel that it's not really an accurate description of him. I think that he isn't technically a black conservative. I'm not trying to stand up for black conservatives by any means. I dislike black conservatives, but I feel that to describe him as a black conservative is not a strong enough description, because I don't think that most black conservatives would say some of the kind of things that he said. Just to give some examples, he says most black people are lazy. I don't think that most black conservatives I'm gonna say that. Maybe the odd one might, but it's just I think it's just too embarrassing for a black person, whether conservative or any kind of political persuasion, to come out and say most black people are lazy. Another thing he said is really outrageous is most blacks are mentally retarded. I do not believe
Wow.
that most black conservatives would say that. As much as I think that the typical thing that black conservatives says is that there's no real racism today, get rid of affirmative action, people complaining about racism too much, they tend to side with police against, victims of police brutality, that kind of thing. But they don't come out and say blacks are mentally retarded. Most blacks are mentally retarded. Most black people are lazy. The kind of stereotypical things that have been said about black people during slavery times. That kind of thing they don't tend to say. What else has he said? He said Nelson Mandela was evil.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I thought it was just amazing.
Yeah, we can play that clip too. It's
Go
really kind
ahead
of
if you
crazy.
want to. Yeah.
Yeah. And just before I do, I feel like the value of people like Jesse Lee Peterson to conservatives is they say what a lot of conservatives think,
Right.
but they can't say it because they'd be called racist. But he says
Right.
it, and he gets a pass because he's black. But it's just as bad.
Right.
But
Right.
that's the appeal. That's the whole appeal of people like Jesse Lee Peterson.
Right. But I just wouldn't say, I feel like we need to describe him in more kind of extreme terms than black conservative, because I feel he goes a lot further than black conservatives. I mean, what else does he say? He says, let me just put this back in. He says, another quote he said is, blacks destroy everything sacred. Insanely,
yeah,
insanely. I know. He says the lack of moral character is a number one problem in the black community today. He said, I can't think of one thing in this country that black people have made better.
Yeah, we can play that clip too. So let me play the one where he talks about Nelson Mandela.
Right.
And so again, he's just saying what a lot of like right wingers and conservatives believe, but they can't say it because it's politically, it's not politically correct to say that, because we know the subtext is things were better under apartheid. That's the actual subtext of what they're saying. So yeah, let me play the clip of him talking with Lauren Southern. And this is very important too, because very recently Donald Trump tweeted about South Africa,
right,
and the farm issue, or like basically the land issue. And so this is an idea that kind of came from like white supremacists, like Stormfront. So it went from like Stormfront to people like Lauren Southern to Tucker Carlson, and then to the president. So it's this like there's this pipeline, this white supremacist pipeline leading up to, from white supremacists to the president's mouth. So yeah, let me play that clip of him talking with Lauren Southern about Nelson Mandela.
I have always thought that Nelson Mandela was an evil man, and when they brought him here to our country, presenting him as a good person, I'm saying no. Nelson Mandela is head of the ANC. He's not a good man. Do you agree with me that Nelson Mandela was an evil man?
Well, the fact that he introduced his opposition with 57 public bombings and was part of the Communist Party, yeah. I don't think that's an opinion. I think it's an objective statement.
Yes.
If he had been white or even Asian or anything but Black and during the time he was in, I think that there would be far more criticism. And certainly we can speak of his wife as well, the tactics like necklacing they used against other Blacks who simply wanted to work with the government at the time, setting them on fire with tires around their neck. It was evil. Of course, these were evil atrocities, and we're sold a false narrative by the media today of who these people were.
Whites are not allowed to work in peace there in Africa, and so as a result of that, the whole country is suffering now. It seemed to me that people were better under apartheid than they are with what's happening now.
That's something that, of course, I feel like I can't even give my opinion on.
Yeah, so I just want to pause it here. So it's interesting, like, again, she said, I can't give my opinion. I wonder why, because, like, that's what she thinks. But he said so she doesn't have to, right?
Exactly.
And that's the whole purpose of Jesse Lee Peterson. Say the things that I think so I don't have to say them and get the blowback. But and one other thing I want to talk about too. So Lawrence Southern's talking about the tactics of the ANC. So do any of us like talk about the tactics that were used against the Germans or used against any oppressor? Like, you know, if someone collaborated with the enemy, we're not going to treat them like a good person. You know, like the people who collaborated with the British during the American Civil Revolutionary War, like, we kicked them out or killed them. Like, people who collaborate with the enemy are the enemy. Doesn't matter what race they are. And so they were against the revolution, and they were treated as enemies, you know?
Exactly. You're at war.
You're at war, yeah. And you're at war with an oppressor who was you know, using horrific tactics against you. So
exactly.
So, I mean, you know, like, they don't talk about what the apartheid government did to people.
Exactly. I mean, he languished in jail for most of his, you know, adult life. Yeah. And he basically gave his whole of his life for that cause. And there's no way they couldn't have done what they did, you know, without having some kind of violence. I mean, if they were having violence enacted on them, the only way to fight back is through violence. Otherwise, we wouldn't have wars.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's what revolution is. Like, you have violence to usurp your oppressor, and all politics is some level of violence, right? You know, like the United States government, we use violence to get taxes, we use violence to fight wars, we use violence all the time, but we legitimize it in different ways. But, like, you know, in the South Africa case, they were totally justified in fighting the apartheid regime and all of the people who collaborated with the government.
Exactly. I mean, this was their land. It's like having Black people marching into somewhere like Germany and taking the whole of Germany over. I mean, you're not going to have a problem with Germans fighting them. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's totally ridiculous, yeah. But yeah, again, Jesse's just saying what she's thinking. And that's just why he's so useful to them.
That is the whole idea of it, because it's a Black person saying what they are really thinking. But they don't feel they can say. And so he's really, really extremely useful in that sense.
Yeah, so let's continue with this.
Yeah.
I would say under apartheid, just because things were better under apartheid does not mean apartheid is good. What it means is that the government now is doing such a poor job and socialism is so bad that it's literally worse than apartheid.
So let me address this real quick too. So a lot of people talk about how during apartheid, the GDP was larger, right? So a lot of that was because they had basically literally slave labor. They forced people to work, and then they took the benefit of their labor, and then the capitalists took it. And then that, of course, it made the GDP larger, but people are poor. People are forced to do labor. that they got no benefit from. So now you have a more equitable type of environment. And so, of course, the GDP isn't as good, but the GDP doesn't matter for your average poor African who's working in a mine. They don't care about the GDP. They don't care about how good big businesses are doing, because that doesn't help them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's what's crazy is I had individuals come up to me of all races in South Africa and tell me the rand was higher under apartheid. We had less crime under apartheid because people were actually punished for murder.
Yeah, that is statistically not true at all. Violence has actually gone down since apartheid. That's just not true.
Attack and assault. And so, yeah, there were a lot of aspects under apartheid that were better. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. That means the government now is so bad that it's literally worse than.
You know what got me too is that the whites that you talked to were afraid to tell the truth. They were afraid to even say what the truth is. And I'm thinking that's what's happening in America right now, is that if white people don't start speaking up and fighting back and saying no, we could have the same situation in America, because whites are hated in America, unjustly hated in America. And if whites don't start speaking up and the people of color take over, we can have the same situation here in America.
Okay, so I feel like that was the point of that whole thing, is like, you know, this is the narrative that they're selling, and he just said it. They're saying, look at South Africa. This is what's going to happen. Yeah, the black government is taking all the land from the white people, and they're killing white farmers, blah, blah, blah. Be afraid of people that aren't white taking over. And it's going to happen to you, so you have to vote for Trump. That's the whole thing they're selling, that fear, that anxiety. When in reality, all the government's trying to do is redistribute the land to people who it was stolen from, or to people that are poor. That's what they're doing.
He is an extremely dangerous person because of the fact that he is trying to scare white people about, and he actually had a video that he released probably about June, where the title of the video is something like, white people are hated by people of color and / children of Satan. And that is the kind of thing that if you have people like, you know, Dylan Roof type of people watching it, they could take that as a, you know, hey, it's a black person saying this. It really must be true. This is a black person saying that black people hate white people, you know, and, you know, so I think that really incites racial violence.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Dylan Roof, because one of the things that's kind of becoming more well known is that Dylan Roof, you see he had this jacket on, and he had a bunch of these like different patches, and one of them was the original flag of South Africa.
South African.
Right? Because, you know, he like aligned himself with this type of white, you know, white separatist, white identity movement. And again, that's why they keep going to the South Africa as something for them to be afraid of, because it's like, it's this thing that it's their ultimate fear is like, oh, you know, the others are going to take over, and then they're going to, you know, take our stuff. But in reality, it's like, they're going to take over. They're going to try and create equality. And for them, you know, if for someone who's always had privilege, equality is oppression. And that's the problem. They see all equality as bad for them, not good for others.
South Africa is not remotely comparable anyway. South Africa was a situation where it was a majority black country that was being oppressed by a tiny minority. That country was their country. They were being oppressed by the Europeans. Basically, the same thing happened in America, whereby the white Americans killed all the Native Americans. So they didn't really have any fight back because they had killed them. But we don't have that situation in America because we have majority white country here. Yeah. So that kind of thing couldn't happen here. And the thing that happened in South Africa, if they're taking lands that were stolen from black people, that is something that's justified to take those lands back.
Yeah. Someone, they gave a really good analogy. It's like a lot of people saying like, oh, you can't rob some random person who, you know, took something from someone in the past. But it's like, what if someone robbed me and took my watch? Is it okay for me to take my watch back from their grandchild who got my stolen watch? Is that okay? I mean,
exactly.
we would say yes.
That is fine to do that.
Yeah, we would say yes, because you still stole it. It's not legally yours. It's theft, even if it takes generations to right the wrong.